Do you ever feel stuck, like you're living your life on autopilot? Are you ready to shift into high gear and reach the success you so richly deserve? Welcome to the Play Big Movement podcast. I am your host, Sharon Liz, entrepreneur, business strategist, and best-selling author. Playing big is not about settling for good enough or being comfortable. It is about reaching your highest potential and achieving your greatest success. Join me in my Play Big movement as I interview top experts in business, money, and entrepreneurship, all ready to serve you and to help you play big, be number one in your field, live your legacy, and create maximum impact. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Liz. And I'm excited today to introduce you to a new friend, a very successful new friend. Liz Faircloth is just an incredible businesswoman, real estate investor, and somebody who is invested in helping other women. So Liz, thank you for being with me.
It's an honor, Sharon. Thank you for having me, and excited to chat with you today.
Well, you're a partner in the DeRosa Group, and you grew that with your husband to real estate all up and down the Eastern Seaboard, valued, I think, $130 million. I mean, it's very impressive. And yet, at the same time, you wanted to give back and educate people. So you have a very successful podcast. You have a very successful network that you're supporting women in investing. And so I really want to get to that, but I want to start with little Liz, how did you get started? Where did you grow up? And how did you get into real estate?
Sure. I love that. I was saying, I envision myself with a bowl cut when you say little Liz, because that's what I see myself as a little kid. I grew up in New Jersey. Grew up in a little town in New Jersey with two older sisters. So I was the youngest of three, and two parents, great hardworking Italian people, third generation. So hard work was just kind of part of our family. It's just what you did. I grew up as a tomboy. I was involved in sports. I loved being active and really, doing those sort of things. I started to really become engaged with like helping people and supporting them through like a bunch of different extracurricular activities. So in college, I actually went to Fiji and volunteered for Habitat for Humanity. I raised all the money because I didn't have $2K, neither did my parents at the time. So I actually raised it from our church and local support to help people. And so supporting people, helping people is always kind of part of who I was. Real estate didn't come into my life really in a sense until my brother-in-law handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad. Due to you, Sharon, and he handed me this book and he said, you need to read this. And I was in graduate school for social work, so I wanted to be a therapist. I really had this dream of opening my own practice, and I was very focused on it as well. And he handed me that, and I opened my eyes to things I just never thought before, saw before. He was the first entrepreneur I ever met, ever knew. My dad was a school teacher. My mom worked part-time when we weren't in school, and never got a college degree. So, I had just an amazing upbringing, but not from I didn't see entrepreneurs building businesses or investing. So, like I said, my brother-in-law was like, you really need to read this. And after that, I was like, it could be a really amazing way to create value for my family and create generational wealth. And again, I was in my 20s, so I didn't know much either. And at the same time, I met my now husband. And so I handed him the book, and then we played Cash Flow Quadrant. We started going to RIA meetings every weekend. We lived 2 hours away, and that's what we did literally every weekend. We were in our 20s. Most 20-year-olds were not doing that. And we just had this vision together. We didn't know how to do it. We didn't know much about real estate. We had no connections. We borrowed our first 30 grand from my father, who quite honestly didn't have much to give either, but trusted us and had saved some money. And we bought our first duplex in 2004 and figured it out, cold called, owners and walked the streets, walk for, as they say, dollars, walking for dollars and door knocking. We really, in a very scrappy way, found our first deal and made it happen. And that kind of gave us our start, in terms of real estate. So it a lot of hard work, a lot of a year it took us to educate ourselves. And then it took us many months to just get that first deal underway. And we had every excuse not to do it, right? Because we didn't have the money. We really didn't have any contacts. We knew no contractors. we figured it out though.
Well, I bet you learned a lot of your most valuable lessons actually doing it and making the mistakes and learning the lessons from that, because that's part of it, is just getting out there and applying yourself. So you went from a duplex to now you're in, syndications and large properties. And so that's quite the journey of something that you can really share with other people. I know you do that on your radio show. How did you, make that decision to start doing the radio show and supporting women and investing in real estate?
Yeah, and it's funny because our 5-year anniversary of our podcast is literally today. So it's a kind of a neat milestone. And we were told at the time when we started too, Sharon, you get a kick out of this, that we would run out of women to invest. And I was told that, by a couple of very close male colleagues. And 300 episodes later, we have not run out of women to interview. So at the time, 5 years ago, my husband and I were still building our business. It was right around this time of my second child. And at that time in our lives too, I met Andressa, my now partner in InvestHER. We were doing a number of projects together. So we were doing some fix and flips. We had a new construction project we were doing. We started out as very good friends and then just started to morph into doing some deals together. So we would get together on these projects. We'd meet halfway because we were also not super close to each other. She was actually in Philadelphia. We were outside of Philadelphia. And we'd be getting together and talking, and we'd be like, where are all the women in this business? We knew that they were out there. We didn't know many of them. We would still go to like conferences and RIA meetings. And honestly, there was a few and far between that and we just knew that there was more women out there. And we said, how cool would it be to shine the light for women only that are doing deals, that are investing in real estate, that are creating generational wealth, but on their own terms, quite honestly, not because they're not going to follow this prescribed, kill yourself to work hard. A lot of women are gravitated to this business because they can do it on their own terms, right? They can get their kids off the bus. They can get them on the bus. They can take a few hours off to go to their kids' school dance or what have you. So that was important to us to create. Our mission is not just to empower women, but to do it in a way to live a balanced life. And we know balance is not in and of itself real, but in the sense of like a holistic balance is certainly something attainable. So that was our mission. That was what we want to do. We didn't know if any women would even be interested in our podcast or our community. We just knew, we felt like it was needed, but that was our hunch. So that was 5 years ago, and it kind of grew into we are published on Bigger Pockets podcast now and their family of podcasts, which is super, helpful and neat. We have 60 meetups across the country that are women's circles coming together that, support each other. We have a Facebook community that's free. We have a lot of free resources. And then obviously you'll be keynoting at our annual conference, our InvestHER Con on May 18th and 19th. That's going to be at the Omni in Scottsdale. We're so excited about having you keynote. And that's our theme this year is generational wealth. So a little idea morphed into this movement, I'd like to say. And our goal and our ultimate goal is that it's a worldwide movement where women are giving and getting the support they need to create wealth on their own terms and not relying on anyone else.
Well, we've actually certainly heard the stats that say women are better investors than men, and you have felt that true in your experience as well, correct?
Yeah. And it's funny, as you look at more of the research and the statistics, women actually outperform men, right, in a lot of investment decisions. But yet when you think of investor, and if you polled a group of people, what would they draw? Would they draw Wall Street? What did they think of? A white male, traditionally in a sense. But wealth is not gender specific. It's not, race specific. It's everyone's right, and so, yeah, I think women are uniquely positioned, I'll say, and of course, I know a lot about personalities. I used to work as a consultant and actually helping teams and people as we were building our business. That was what I did for a number of years while we were building out our business too. So I appreciate different personality traits, but I think what I find with women, I'm going to be a little general because obviously there's different types of women, of course, but in terms of conservative, you find a lot of women because I talk to them, I'm involved, we have a community. So I have the honor to connect a lot. And what you find is there's a little bit of a cautiousness. They may not act as fast or jump into something without and there's obviously levels of risk taking, right? Some women are big risk takers, some of them are cautious, but in general, right, a little more cautious, a little more conservative. Yet that actually helps them outperform, men in a sense, and it makes them kind of more successful as an investor, making the right calls. What the gap is that what takes women time to get to that decision is what we're trying to really bridge the gap on, because we know once women make that call, make that decision, it's going to be the right one. Or at least, statistically be better ones than just kind of like, oh, this is the flavor of the month. So how do you then kind of bridge that gap? And what we find is a lot of the women that are in our community, and I know you probably see this, Sharon, is that they're solopreneurs. They're doing it by themselves. They're trying to, and we do that in all of our areas of our life, right? And we need to stop doing that, especially women that are, high functioning, high performing. They just do it themselves. So community is all about, we always said we're all about community over content. You can Google how to flip a house. You can Google how to buy a rental. This is not rocket science. Not the easiest things sometimes, but it's certainly not rocket science. You can't Google how to build a relationship in a community and pick up the phone and get a quick resource. That's a value for a lot of women, and they don't always put themselves out there. So that's what we really stand for, is women collectively getting the support, so they're not alone.
It's so true. It's the power of association. I teach the power of association. And you and your husband got started by going to an association of real estate investors and making those contacts and extent. And when you have the ability to establish those relationships, you hear about deals even before the public does, because people, if you're a proven reliable investor, people will bring the deal to you before they even tell the public. So that's that power of association and making sure you understand what you're doing. You have the right people around you, the right team. And so, one of the things that I find, and women tend to almost sometimes lose a deal because it takes so long trying to decide what to do. And then when they actually get to that point where they've got the deal, they're afraid of raising outside money. So how do you find the confidence to raise outside capital for a real estate property?
Yeah. And we really, our first deal was a private loan, from my father at 6% interest. It was lovely at the time. But, I think for my husband and I, when we started raising outside money, we were really tapped. We had used line of credit. We kind of figured it out up until that point. And we said, for us to grow, and for most people, if they want to scale, you have to get creative in terms of using outside money or do some sort of creative financing. So we really leaned into private loans, mostly on fix and flips, new construction, and then equity in different types of deals. Now you can do our first equity deal, I'll say, was a gentleman that I went to college with, or grad school with. And I met him for coffee in Manhattan. We were good friends. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, we're investing in at the time, Trenton. We're building our rental portfolio." And he said, "The best thing, Sharon, that you have to listen to people when they talk." He said, "I would love to invest in real estate, but I just don't have the time." And I think raising private capital on any level is how we really scaled our business, is really creating win-wins. You're creating investment opportunities for people. You're not asking for money. It's not unless you've created a nonprofit, that's very different. But we created a for-profit, and it's about creating win-win. The last thing you want to do is have win-lose, where you win, the investor loses. You don't want to be the one losing and then winning. It's really about creating those win-win solutions. And sometimes it's a loan, sometimes it's a syndication, sometimes it's one equity partner, and you're both active partners. It's just, you have different tools in the toolkit. And so as a investor, you're trying to figure out, how do I put the right money together? What's appropriate for which deal? So we got really focused on multifamily, and then started to say that it worked. We bought 2 single family homes with this gentleman. He put 50 grand in. He was an active investor. That's also important, because we are syndicators, and you have to be very careful when working with the SEC. But he was an active investor with us. He audited the books. He put the 50 grand in. He did a couple other things. We were the boots on the ground contractors, all those sort of things. And then we we renovated them, and then kind of did the classic BRRRR strategy, where you're buying, renovating, and then renting and refinancing. We took his money out and did it again. So we had this cash flowing asset. We did it again with him. And then he then talked to his friend and introduced us to 2 people. And that's really how we started to build out a group of investors. And then we did our first syndication we call it DeRosa Capital, and then 4 was our first one because we did smaller ones. We're up to 16 was our last one, and so 4 was with him and a group of people where we actually did a syndication. We pulled these were all passive investors, and we filed with the SEC, and that was a it was a 10 unit, a 4 unit, and a 4 unit. So it was actually 18 units that we syndicated. That was our first syndication. So I always like to say to people, if you're getting into the right deals and you're creating opportunity for people, then raising money could be one of the best ways to grow. I mean, but you have to be very prepared to protect these people's money with your life being. And we've had situations, right, where we've had money stolen from us and a bunch of really tough things that I hope my worst enemy doesn't have happen to them. And you have to be willing to, as the operator, put yourself last sometimes.
Yeah. You have to earn the right. Once you have that reputation that you are a good steward of their money and in providing investments, that money keeps coming and it starts growing. And again, that's that power of association. So I love it. So how can people find you, Liz?
Yeah, you can find me through the Real Estate InvestHER website. We're active on Instagram at the Real Estate InvestHER. And you can learn, but on our website or our Facebook community, the Real Estate InvestHER, you can learn about us, follow along, whether it's our podcast or our meetups, and certainly come join us and hear Sharon keynote for us. We're so excited about her coming, and we have a 20 plus speakers. It's going to be just an amazing event in Scottsdale in 2.5 days. And we end it with like a big party. So it's just a really, it's more than just a conference, right? It's going to be more of an experience for women. So
true power of association at work, because it's really collaborating and supporting one another. And just so make sure you understand, it's Real Estate InvestHER, HER.
Yes, HER. So it's the Real Estate InvestHER. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
.com.
It's a great organization. She just has proven over and over again the power of association, and has brought together people to help you not just educate yourself, but to start actually getting involved and finding that niche that's going to work for you. So Liz, you're going to hang out with me for a moment. We're going to do a private Facebook interview, but I just want to thank you for being here. I'm excited to get to know your group. I'm looking forward to it. But most importantly, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with our audience today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me.
All right. So thank you guys so much for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast with Sharon Lechter. Please share it with your friends. Make sure you investigate and learn more about the Real Estate InvestHER Group, and make sure we hear from you. Tell everybody else that you've liked this podcast. Have a great day. You are fabulous. Thank you for listening to this segment of the Play Big Movement podcast. Please subscribe to iTunes and leave us a review, as well as join us in other areas of social media: Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Sharon Lechter, and for Facebook, author Sharon Lechter. Thank you so much and have a fabulous day.